Well, here we are. The amount of times that I've tried to do this has been astronomical, guys. It's just technical difficulty after technical difficulty. But welcome back. Welcome back. Well, we're gonna take the VCF on the trail. These are Roger Chapman's pads. So you'll notice right here, we got a little cam gear, and that's gonna adjust how much flexion that I get right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna adjust that. On the trail, I want very little flexion so that way I have the most robust control. We're gonna make that match on both sides. I can have it asymmetrical if I'd like to where that I have less, I have more flex on one side than the other. The first thing that you notice about these pads is that they are huge. They are bloody chunky, either being something that grows on you or it's something that you just won't want, that you just won't like. Personally, I love it. The Grizzly pads are amazing. Those are great for riding the wheel. The Bio pads are amazing. Those are great for wearing the wheel. These pads are amazing. They're great for fusing yourself to the wheel, becoming one with the wheel. There's a lot of flex and a lot more feeling of integration and feedback that you get from these pads. There is degrees of friction here. You know, there is a little ledge here, that lip rather, that keeps you in once you're in there. It's a grippy functionality of it. So, I mean, each and every part of this has been made with a significant degree of consideration. Sometimes when I'm on the trail, you know, or even when I'm riding in the street, you know, that feeling of flying. What do you call it when you try to fall, but you never hit the ground? And once you get over about 42, 45 miles an hour, you're having to fall forward so hard. It feels like you're literally just free falling into oblivion, you know? If you never find bottom, what is that? It's flying. All right, so first things first, the sand pits here. And immediately, you know, these pads feel much like the Bio pads do in terms of the idea, but in execution, they feel a little bit more fused, a little bit more connected. There we go. Lots of sand. Lots of sand. So when I'm trying to go over the sand, I really don't want to adjust momentum. I just kind of want to carry my momentum forward when I'm going through the sand. Once I find solid ground, then I like to accelerate. And for me, that's a strategy I try to use most. I'll pump my legs a little bit to try to feel out the ground. If I'm familiar with the territory, it's not so critical. But just the same, rain, you know, a bunch of action on the trail can really change the dynamics of how everything feels. And if you've been approaching, you know, changing seasons and there's leaves or pine needles on the trail, treat that like wet or slick road. Ooh. So with the braking, I get so much more leverage with these pads from Roger. There we go. And again, I'm really going to try to ease up into these corners where there's a lot more leaves. Being mindful on these trails because the trees are so darn close. I regularly clip my arms, my shoulders, my camera. My desire to shift speed and be a lot more eloquent works extremely well with these pads. Again, it's more fusion and less wearing. It's more wearing and less riding. There's a lot of flex when you get into the turns. Oh, my phone's trying to pop out of my pocket here, so we're gonna go ahead and secure that. So I really like the way that they feel though in terms of the comfort. That gym floor, or the material that he uses, that diamond plating stuff, it just feels a lot more comfortable than plastic or any of the TPU stuff. So for me, it's definitely a big win in that regard. The more utilitarian look, I think, makes me feel a lot better about beating it up. I don't, even though it is a one-off sort of thing, these are handcrafted, I don't feel as bad about beating it up because it does have this utilitarian look. Let's shift it back to the star of the show because we're getting some nice little slips, and I want you to see everything down below, really get to see how this stuff works. And the flat cameras does a lot that the 360 just can't, in terms of fidelity. They do have that new 8K camera from Insta. I don't know who's got the money for things to render in 8K or even play with that footage, but I don't. There we go. Just really want you guys to kind of see what's happening here. And I promise you, this terrain is so slick. It's ice skating slick. A mixture of pine and the leaves has just completely made it unhospitable in terms of any sort of speed. If you have two wheels, it's a lot of fun because you can, kind of cast the back end around a little bit. Yeah, I really like the way that these feel. Shifting direction with so much leverage in the front and the back is it's just easier. Uh-oh. Don't want the leaves to hit this too much. My receiver's on there kind of precariously, so I like to get you good angles, but I can only do what I can do without messing up my gear. Woo! Leveraging as much as you can into these pads does not feel horrible. It doesn't hurt. And at a certain point, you can get your whole shin leveraged up against here, and it really does wonders in terms of the efficacy of communication to the wheel, being able to get your ideas across, leveraging it, that much real estate is much easier to, communicate to the wheel, get it to perform the maneuvers that you want. If I wanted more mileage or better high speed control, then I would add, or I would take away some of that cam, the impact of that cam flexion, just to give more flex in the pad, in the contact pad. But again, because I'm on a trail, and I want a little bit more control, more of that instantaneous feedback. That's what we're doing. We're gonna do 21 humps. This is a cool little trail that, it's honestly a little pump track. Requires a whole lot of focus, lots of control for it. Lots of opportunities to clip. Just stay on it and stay focused. The VCF honestly make the Master feel a lot more like a smaller wheel, I guess by virtue of how big they are compared to the wheel. So you get a whole lot of leverage, very much like that. The curvature is so soft on the shin there, and where the ankle meets the shin, that little crease, that when you go to jump, you don't have a whole lot of correction in the air. Makes it a lot easier to not spin it up in the air as well, which is kind of nice. That's something that you like. You know, that way it doesn't cut out while you're, you know, trying to jump or anything. Also, if you look, you know, it's really actually works out pretty well for seated riding for me. I've got like a nice little angle here that I can cup my feet into it. So it's really not bad at all. I don't know if it's the best for everyone, but for me it works out really well. On top here, you can see I can rest my quads, or sorry, my hamstrings on the pad. And being able to rest my hamstrings on the pad makes it feel more of like a formal seat. So you see I just kind of get my knees outside of it, come inside, and then I'm able to sit down really well. Is it for every single ride, every single time? Well, I think if you have as much option to play with it as, you know, in terms of the fitting backwards and forwards where it sits, the cams, it's adjustable enough to where it can be a really gentle experience or it can be a very aggressive experience. But it's also really big. And if you don't envision yourself to be a really hardcore electric unicycle rider, then really, really hardcore electric unicycle pads are just not going to be for you. Make no mistake about it. These are some of the most hardcore electric unicycle pads that I have ever been on in my whole entire life. And so I don't know if I would say that these are leisurely, casual sort of riding pads. You know, they're very specific in terms of the utility, what they can do. You know, you wouldn't grab a monster truck to go and deliver mail unless that's where you were delivering mail. Roger has a background in a lot of different building stuff, like light aircraft, you know, flying wings. He's got a lot of action sports in his rapport. You know, having him lend his genius to what it is that we have going on with electric unicycles is a blessing. I don't know if the EUC world is ready to be able to take on these pads, or how would the EUC world take on these pads? Because I think that there's riders out there that are ready for these pads, but I just don't know how you get these pads to people without compromising the integrity of the pads, keeping the quality high, and making it a consistent labor of passion every single time. I'm not really sure exactly how to do that, guys. I'm not really sure if, you know, Roger is ready to do that. So ultimately, you know, will these pads end up staying in R&D forever? They might. They might stay in R&D forever. And they might only sneak out to the very special few. You know, they might only sneak out to the people whose spirits are lined up in the right time, who say the right things in the right place. You know, Zen Lee said something very provocative. He says lots of provocative things, but I don't agree with everything he says, but I'm very, very appreciative of everything that he says. I don't know if that makes sense. I just like that he's sincere. He said something very true, that the EUC, you don't necessarily get to pick EUC. EUC kind of picks you, you know? And to that, the VCF pads, they're kind of like that. It is an amazing thing that special few will ever get to experience. And I think that it's important to know that you don't get to pick that experience will pick you. And I don't really see it becoming mainstream anytime soon. I really don't. But I feel like there are riders that are ready for it. I think that there are riders who need these pads. Who needs these pads? I think riders like Zen Lee, honestly. I think riders like Psychoteraputo in Spain, Roger Hajali, Gaga Naz, Chance, Maribel Vargas. I think that she could take care of these pads. I think that she would be able to use these pads to dominate circuits and tracks that her male counterparts typically dominate a little bit easier. I think that the leverage that these pads give would turn her to an absolute unit.
In conclusion, I'll just have to enjoy these pads for all of us, since there's not enough for everyone. Here I go.
Woo!
Thanks, Roger, and peace out till next time. Later, guys. And remember, if you liked it, like, subscribe, share it. It helps me. I'm a little guy. Help the little guy.